Winter in the Middle Ages did not arrive gently. It came like an old enemy that everyone knew too well, sweeping over the hills and valleys with a quiet cruelty that left no one untouched. The first breath of frost would creep into the air long before the snow came, whispering its warning across the fields where peasants still bent their backs to gather what little was left of the harvest. By the time the last grain was stored and the final sheep herded close to the cottage, the sky had turned gray and the earth had begun to harden beneath their feet. The peasants, bound to the land and to the rhythm of the seasons, knew that from this moment onward, life would slow and tighten like a belt drawn one notch closer each day. The cold was not a passing discomfort. It was a season of trial, one that tested every family's strength, patience, and faith. There were no warm bricks, no roaring chimneys, no blankets of feather or comfort. Their walls were made of wattle and daub, a patchwork of sticks, clay, and straw, and though the gaps were stuffed with mud, the wind always found a way in. When it howled at night, it was as if the whole house sighed with it. Inside, smoke from the fire hung low, trapped by the thatched roof, stinging eyes and lungs. Yet no one dared let the flames die. Fire was not only warmth, it was survival. The peasants collected firewood in the autumn, but wood was scarce and precious. Each log was burned, slowly, carefully, and when it was gone, they turned to peat, dried dung, or anything that might catch a spark. The smell was thick and earthy, the smoke clinging to their clothes, their hair, even their dreams. Outside, the village lay silent beneath a sky the color of iron. The fields that once sang with the sound of scythes and laughter were now lifeless plains of frost. The river, which had once carried fish and water and joy, froze into stillness. Every sound became muffled, the bark of a dog, the creak of a wheel, the call of a distant crow, all softened by the snow until the world seemed half asleep. Hunger was a quiet companion. Even with careful planning, food never stretched far enough. Salted meats hung from the beams above the hearth, but they were for emergencies, not for daily meals. Most days, supper was a thin broth of barley and cabbage, maybe with a few beans or a scrap of lard if fortune smiled. Bread was dark and heavy, baked from rye or oats, and eaten slowly to make it last. Each bite was work, but it kept them alive. The peasants had learned to respect the rhythm of the cold, to eat less, move less, and sleep more. They wrapped themselves in whatever they owned, rough wool tunics, cloaks patched a dozen times, scraps of fur if they could afford it. Children slept with their parents on straw mats, huddled together under woolen blankets that never felt quite warm enough. Sometimes, if the frost was too sharp, the family brought their animals inside. A cow or goat in the corner gave more than milk. It gave warmth. The breath of living things filled the room with a gentle heat that no fire could match. The smell was strong, but the comfort was stronger. Beyond the village, winter had its own beauty, cruel, but strangely peaceful. The fields sparkled under the pale light of the moon. Trees stood like statues draped in white, and the sky glittered with cold stars. But no one lingered to admire it. To step outside was to risk the bite of frost, the numbness of fingers, the ache that spread through the bones. Every task, even the smallest, became a battle against the elements, fetching water from a frozen stream, breaking ice with bare hands, or carrying buckets heavy with cold until your arms trembled. Yet, somehow, they endured. They always had. The peasants did not curse the winter. They accepted it. It was part of life, part of the same world that gave them wheat and sunlight in the summer. And so, when the night fell and the snow drifted down, they sat by the fire in silence, watching the sparks dance and fade. The flames made the walls glow, soft and orange, like a memory of warmth that could never quite be captured. Outside, the wind howled across the empty fields, but inside, there was a kind of peace, the peace of those who had learned, over many generations, that survival itself was something to be grateful for. Each breath they took was proof that even the longest, coldest nights could be endured, and that one day the sun would return again to thaw the world back to life. Morning in a medieval village during winter came slowly, as if even the sun were reluctant to rise, leaving the world in a soft, gray silence that stretched across frozen fields and icy roads. And inside the cottages, the air was heavy with cold, every breath forming little clouds that disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. And when a peasant finally stirred from a straw mattress, the first task was always the same: to wake the fire and coax it back to life. For, without the fire, there could be no breakfast, no warmth, and no courage to face the day. And yet it was never easy, because embers from the night before often lay cold and gray, and kindling had to be dry enough to catch. Flint struck carefully against steel, moss, and shavings arranged just so, until a tiny spark finally flared into a flame that flickered and stretched, filling the room with heat that smelled of smoke and wood. And as the fire grew, the family gathered close, feeling the fragile warmth against their frozen fingers, knowing that this small flame could mean the difference between surviving the day and succumbing to the bitter cold that crept through every crack in the walls. And after the fire was lit, they had to fetch water from the nearest stream or well, often breaking through ice with stones and sticks, the icy shock biting their hands and making them red and numb, while outside the wind cut across the open fields, rattling doors and whipping at cloaks, a constant reminder that nature was merciless, and there was no time for delay because the animals needed feeding. The cows, goats, and pigs waiting in their barns for hay or straw, and even the smallest children helped, carrying scraps or carrying buckets, their breath hanging in the air like smoke, the sound of their small footsteps muffled by snow and frost. And all the while, the work never ceased. From chopping firewood to mending fences, to sweeping the thin snow from paths. And the day seemed short, the sun pale and weak in the sky, barely illuminating the frozen world. So peasants had to move efficiently, wearing layer upon layer of rough wool, patched linen, and sometimes fur if they were lucky, though gloves were rare and fingers often cracked and bled in the cold. And when they paused to eat, it was usually a simple meal, thin broth, a bit of bread, a few beans, nothing more. Yet it was enough to restore energy, enough to keep moving, and there was no complaint, because complaint wasted energy that was already precious. And the villagers relied on each other silently, sharing tasks and support, understanding without words that their survival depended on teamwork. And as the day wore on, the shadows lengthened, signaling the approach of night, when darkness would fall quickly and the temperature would drop even more, and still there was work to do. For no hour of the day could be wasted. The house needed repairs, the roof patched, fences strengthened, paths cleared for anyone who might venture out, and tools had to be stored carefully, lest they freeze or break. And when the final task was done, the villagers returned home, exhausted but alive, carrying more wood, more hope, and perhaps a scrap of food for supper. The air inside their cottages warm with firelight and the smell of burning wood, creating a small haven against the vast cold outside. And around the fire, they mended clothes, whispered stories, or hummed familiar tunes. Children leaning against parents, animals in corners, smoke curling toward the thatched roof. And as night deepened and the wind howled outside, every breath inside felt heavier with warmth. And when the family finally lay down to sleep on straw mats or under rough blankets, pressed together for warmth, they understood that each day survived, each fire kept alive, each task completed was a victory against the winter's relentless grip. A quiet proof that life continued, and that even in the harshest, coldest times, there was order, purpose, and a small, enduring hope that spring would eventually arrive to melt the frost, warm the earth, and bring new life back to their frozen world. And in that tiny cocoon of firelight and body heat, the peasants could close their eyes, breathing slowly, feeling the small triumph of enduring another day, listening to the wind outside as if it were telling them the same story they had always known. Life goes on, and with patience, courage, and care, they would wake again tomorrow to face the cold with strength that only hardship can teach. Even in the coldest, harshest winters, medieval peasants found small moments of comfort that made life bearable, and perhaps even a little joyful. For, though the world outside their cottages was a frozen wasteland of white fields, biting wind, and silent trees, inside the walls of their humble homes, life continued quietly, and in ways that were deeply human. For the fire, carefully nurtured from the fragile embers of the previous night, cast a warm, flickering light that danced on the rough wooden walls and straw-filled floors, bringing a sense of life to a room otherwise filled with the weight of cold and fatigue. And families huddled close together, wrapped in layers of patched wool and linen, their bodies pressed together for warmth, leaning on each other and the animals who sometimes slept in the corners to share their heat. And in this closeness, there was a comfort that no storm, no frost, and no hunger could take away. For the rhythm of human warmth, breathing, and quiet conversation made the night feel less endless. And the children listened with wide eyes to stories told by their elders. Tales of saints and heroes, of clever animals and wise kings, and even simple advice about surviving the land. And these stories, spoken softly by firelight, carried a magic of their own, comforting, familiar, and gentle, allowing everyone to feel part of something larger than the cold and hardship surrounding them. And when the family could spare a moment, they hummed old tunes, beat simple rhythms on wooden surfaces, or plucked strings of handmade instruments. And though the music was faint and imperfect, it filled the room with life, a soft counterpoint to the wind outside, reminding them that even in winter, there was beauty and creation. And when food was shared, even if it was only a small piece of bread or a bit of porridge stretched across a family, The act carried meaning beyond nourishment, for sharing was not just survival, it was love, trust, and solidarity. A quiet recognition that even if the world outside was cruel, inside, kindness still endured, and as the snow fell steadily outside, covering the ground, roofs, and fields in a soft, white blanket, the villagers could watch it through the tiny windows, seeing the reflection of the fire glow on the snow, and the quiet, unbroken stillness was both frightening and calming, a reminder that the world would continue beyond their doors, indifferent to their struggles, but also beautiful in its own frozen way. And the adults spoke softly to their children, pointing out the shapes of trees and rooftops under snow, or naming the sounds of the wind, teaching them not only to survive, but to understand the world in which they lived. And in these moments, there was laughter, too, small and fleeting, but precious, a reminder that joy could still exist in hardship, that human connection mattered more than comfort or warmth alone. And when night deepened, blankets were pulled tighter, bodies pressed closer, animals nuzzled against legs and feet for heat, and the smell of smoke, straw, and wool mingled with the faint aroma of cooking porridge, creating a cocoon of sensory warmth that made the bitter world outside seem distant. And as the family drifted toward sleep, eyes heavy with exhaustion and hearts full of quiet triumph, they knew that surviving another day was an achievement in itself, that each breath, each heartbeat, each small act of care and attention had carried them through the trials of cold, hunger, and fatigue, and that tomorrow would bring more work, more wind, more snow, and more darkness, but also more of these small joys, stories, music, warmth, shared meals, and the tender comfort of human togetherness. And in this knowledge, they could finally rest, lulled by the crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of loved ones, and the steady rhythm of life continuing in the face of winter. For even in the harshest times, even in the coldest nights, they had found light, hope, and the enduring, gentle satisfaction of having survived another day. Medieval peasants' cottages were small, humble, and fragile against the winter's cold, yet inside them life moved with a quiet resilience. For each home, made of wattle and daub, with walls of sticks and mud packed tightly together, and roofs of straw layered thick to keep out the wind and snow, served as both shelter and stage for the rhythms of daily existence. And though the rooms were low, with ceilings that forced adults to bend, and floors that were hard, uneven, and often covered only with straw, the cottages held warmth, community, and a kind of comforting familiarity, for every corner was known, and every space had a purpose, and even the smallest window, a mere slit or hole covered with oiled cloth, brought in just enough light to see by during the day, though it also let in drafts that carried the chill. And the hearth sat at the center, the heart of the house, where fire was kept alive constantly, smoke curling upward through a hole in the roof or a narrow chimney, giving both heat and a faint smell of wood and ash that clung to walls, beams, and hair, a scent that was part of home and memory. And around the hearth, the family gathered to cook, eat, repair clothing, or simply share stories. The flames dancing across faces and casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into the corners. And every object had meaning. Every item earned its place through necessity, for there was little space for luxury or clutter, only what was needed. a table carved roughly from wood, benches or stools, chests to store grain, herbs, or scraps of cloth. Sometimes a shelf or two holding simple utensils, a few plates, spoons, and the occasional knife. Each piece worn and used, polished, smooth by years of handling, and animals often shared the space, especially during the coldest nights, with a cow or goat in a corner, or a dog lying by the hearth, offering warmth as well as companionship, and children moved carefully around the small area, playing quietly or helping with chores, learning from a young age to respect the fire, the animals, and the fragile balance of heat, light, and space. And the walls themselves seemed to breathe with the house, expanding slightly when damp, contracting when dry, holding stories in the cracks of mud, straw, and plaster, a record of winters past and labor endured, while outside the wind howled, snow pressed against the walls, and the cold threatened, reminding all inside why the structure mattered so much, why every repair, every layer of straw on the roof, every patch of mud on a wall was vital for survival. And the simplicity of the cottage did not diminish its comfort, for the inhabitants made the space their own through habit, care, and human presence, decorating it with practical touches such as hooks for hanging tools or utensils, small shelves for candles or herbs, and even drawings or scratches on the walls left by children. Each mark a small proof of life and presence, and the smell of cooking mingled with smoke and animals, creating a scent that was at once harsh and homely, a constant reminder that survival depended on careful attention. And as the day went on, the hearth roared with fire for cooking meals, boiling water for washing, or heating stones that would warm beds at night, and every movement inside was deliberate, conscious of the precious space and resources. For in such a small and exposed structure, waste or carelessness could bring cold, hunger, or illness. Yet, despite the Spartan conditions, there was a beauty in the rhythm of life, a sense of security in knowing every object and every corner had a place and purpose. And when night fell, the family huddled close together, sharing body heat, resting after the long labors, and finding comfort in the warmth of the fire and the familiar smells and sounds of home. For even a modest house of mud and straw could be a sanctuary, and it was within this fragile shelter, glowing softly from the hearth, that the peasants experienced their safest moments, the gentle lull of ordinary life, the quiet victories of surviving another day, and the subtle hope that tomorrow, with the same roof overhead and the same fire burning, life would continue in its measured, enduring, and necessary rhythm. In the center of every medieval peasant's cottage stood the hearth, a simple stone or clay structure, sometimes no more than a shallow pit in the floor, but it was the heart of the home, the place where warmth, light, food, and family all converged. And from the moment the first embers of the day were kindled, the hearth ruled the rhythm of life. For without it, nothing else could happen. It provided heat to stave off the relentless winter chill, light, and a focal point where families gathered, spoke, and shared the stories that gave life meaning. And tending the fire was an art that every adult knew well, for it required patience, care, and constant attention, beginning with gathering the driest wood, peat, or even dung, carefully layering, kindling, and arranging the flames so they burned steadily rather than sputtering out, because a fire that died meant a day of shivering, frozen fingers and damp blankets. And the smoke, which sometimes filled the room, had to be coaxed gently through the roof opening or narrow chimney, a delicate balance between warmth and suffocation, teaching every member of the household a respect for both danger and necessity. And around this glowing hearth, the family moved in a careful choreography, cooking meals of porridge, broth, or salted vegetables, heating water for washing, drying clothes or herbs, and even warming stones to place near sleeping mats at night, while children learned to be still near the flames, watching and listening, absorbing the knowledge of how to survive winter through observation and quiet instruction. And the hearth's importance extended beyond practical needs, for it was also a center of comfort and connection, a place where laughter could emerge despite hardship, where whispered stories of saints, heroes, or old village legends were passed down from parents to children, carrying moral lessons, entertainment, and a sense of belonging, all in one. And even the humblest household took pride in the hearth, decorating it with small touches such as hanging utensils, drying herbs above the fire, or storing small stones to radiate warmth into the night. While pets often curled at the edges, sharing the heat, their breaths mingling with smoke and the earthy smells of burning wood, straw, and food, creating an olfactory landscape that was as familiar as it was comforting. And as the day went on, the flames guided every activity, from mending clothes to preparing simple meals, and no movement within the cottage was wasted. For every action near the fire had a purpose: to maintain warmth, to prepare for the night, to teach the young, to care for the household, and to survive, because in winter, even a small lapse could mean frostbitten fingers, spoiled food, or discomfort that multiplied over hours. Yet, in this constant attention, there was also a meditation, a quiet rhythm that slowed the mind even as the body labored. And the fire became a companion in its own right, a steady presence whose crackle marked the passage of hours, the subtle changes in air, and the approach of evening. And when night fell, the hearth's glow became even more precious, illuminating faces tired from work, reflecting in the eyes of children listening to whispered stories, and dancing across the walls of mud and straw, showing every scratch and imperfection as part of the lived-in beauty of the home. While outside, snow drifted silently against the walls, wind pressed through the gaps, and darkness stretched across the village. Yet, inside, the fire created a sanctuary, a space of warmth, comfort, and gentle life. And as the family huddled closer, sharing the heat, they felt not only the physical warmth, but the emotional reassurance that life continued, that bonds held firm, and that the rhythm of the hearth, tending, feeding, watching, waiting, was in itself a lesson in endurance, patience, and quiet triumph. For even the smallest spark, carefully nurtured, could bring comfort, hope, and stability in a world that often offered little else. And as sleep approached, the hearth continued to burn steadily, guarding the family through the long night, keeping away the cold, and reminding everyone that within the walls of mud, straw, and warmth, life persisted. Hearts remained connected, and the simple, steady presence of fire could transform even the harshest winter into a space of calm, continuity, and gentle reassurance that tomorrow, as every day before, would begin again with the same glowing center, the same vital rhythm, and the same enduring, quiet magic that only a hearth could provide. As night approached in a medieval peasant cottage, the rhythms of daily life gradually slowed, and the family prepared for the long hours of darkness with careful attention to warmth, comfort, and survival. For winter nights were long and cold, and every measure of preparation mattered, beginning with the straw-covered floors, which were gathered into thick mats or beds, sometimes layered with cloth or worn blankets, and often arranged in corners or along walls to conserve space and heat, while animals that shared the cottage, such as cows, goats, or dogs, were guided into their own corners, not only for shelter, but also because their body heat added to the overall warmth of the room. And children were positioned close to parents or older siblings, their small bodies pressed together to conserve warmth, while blankets, however thin or tattered, were drawn tightly around them. Woolen cloaks or coats sometimes tucked underneath to create extra layers, and the adults themselves would strip down to adjust layers, ensuring that the fire's heat reached everyone in the most efficient way possible, because even a small lapse could allow the cold to creep into bones and joints, leaving shivers that lingered for hours, and the fire itself, carefully tended throughout the evening, was replenished with fresh wood or peat, with glowing embers arranged to radiate heat toward the sleeping areas. For the hearth was not just a source of light, and smoke rising steadily through the chimney or hole in the roof reminded everyone of the fragile balance of survival, as too much smoke could be stifling, yet too little meant the fire might die too soon, leaving the family exposed to frost. And while the children were tucked in, parents might sit quietly near the fire, mending clothes, sharpening tools, or preparing simple meals for the next day, their movements deliberate and unhurried, a gentle rhythm that matched the dim, flickering light and the low crackle of burning wood. And in these hours, stories continued, sometimes whispered, sometimes murmured over the soft breathing of sleeping children, recounting saints, heroic ancestors, or amusing tales passed down through generations, each story serving not only as entertainment but as instruction, moral guidance, and a comforting distraction from the cold world outside. While the sound of wind pressing against the walls, rattling the thatch, and whistling through small gaps reminded everyone of the danger beyond, reinforcing the preciousness of warmth, shelter, and human connection within. And as the night deepened, those still awake might stretch a hand toward the embers, warming fingers stiffened by labor, or check on the animals to ensure they were settled and safe, their steady, caring attention forming an invisible network of security that held the household together. And the scent of smoke, straw, wool, and cooking mingled into a familiar aroma, heavy with the memory of countless winters survived, calming the mind as the body finally began to relax. And when at last all work was complete, the family leaned back near the hearth, eyes heavy, faces softened by fatigue and relief, and listened to the rhythm of their own breathing mingling with the gentle crackle of fire, the muted wind, and the occasional rustle of an animal, letting these sounds lull them into the deep, restorative sleep that was essential for enduring the next day. And even in the smallest cottages, where space was limited and floors uneven, there was a profound sense of security and order, for the careful arrangement of beds, animals, and fire created an environment where survival and comfort coexisted, a space where the family could rest safely while storms raged outside. And as sleep took hold, the hearth continued its quiet vigil, the embers glowing steadily, the warmth radiating through every corner, ensuring that the long night passed without hardship. And in this routine, repeated over countless generations, the peasants discovered a rhythm that allowed life to persist through the harshest winters, proving that even in a home of mud, straw, and simple means, there was a system, a gentle order, and a quiet triumph in surviving the night, keeping each other safe, warm, and ready for the challenges and small joys of the coming day. In the cold, harsh winters of medieval villages, what peasants ate was as much about survival as it was about nourishment, and every meal, no matter how simple, was carefully planned and executed to keep bodies warm, strong, and capable of enduring the long, bitter nights, for food was scarce and precious, and every scrap had to be used wisely, beginning with grains, which formed the backbone of their diet, often in the form of dark, heavy bread made from rye or oats, baked once or twice a week and stored in small wooden boxes or wrapped in straw to preserve it. And though it was coarse and chewy, it provided energy that lasted through hours of labor in freezing fields or tending to animals in unheated barns. And peasants also relied on root vegetables, such as turnips, carrots, and onions, which could survive the frost in cellars or buried in straw, sometimes boiled into thin soups or pottages, stretched with water to make them last longer. The aroma of simmering vegetables filling cottages with a faint warmth even before the first taste, while any available meat, usually salted or smoked, was rationed carefully, sometimes only for special occasions, with bits added sparingly to stews to enhance flavor and provide the protein needed to endure winter. And legumes like beans or peas were another important source of nourishment, dried and stored for months, slowly soaked and cooked over the hearth, releasing both flavor and energy, while dairy, if the family had cows or goats, came in the form of thin milk, fresh or curdled, and occasionally cheese, simple but sustaining. And in the rare moments when honey, herbs, or fruits were available, they were treasured, not only for taste, but for the small comfort they brought, sweet and fragrant against the blandness of winter meals. And preparation itself became a ritual, for cooking over an open hearth required patience, careful attention to timing, and constant stoking of the fire, the smoke curling into the room, mixing with the scents of food, straw, and animals, creating a sensory world that was both harsh and comforting. And every meal was an event, no matter how modest, as family members gathered near the hearth to eat, the flickering light warming not only their hands and faces, but their spirits, while conversation was quiet, focused on the day's tasks, observations of weather, or simple stories. For mealtime was also a time of reflection, teaching, and planning, and the act of eating together reinforced bonds, shared responsibilities, and the unspoken understanding that survival depended on cooperation, efficiency, and gratitude. And children learned early how to ration food, savor every bite, and respect the efforts of those who had prepared it. For waste could mean hunger, and hunger in winter could mean illness or death. And in addition to the physical sustenance, the warmth of food itself had a psychological effect. The heat of a bowl of soup or porridge spreading through cold hands, calming stomachs, and providing the small comfort that, despite hardship, there was nourishment, safety, and a rhythm to the day. And even the simplest ingredients, when combined with care and shared around the hearth, they became a connection to family tradition and the cycles of life that continued through frost and snow, offering hope that spring would return and that the labor, planning, and endurance of winter would ultimately sustain not only the body but the heart. And as each family member ate slowly, savoring the warmth and flavor, they were reminded that survival depended on small, deliberate actions, on respecting the land, the seasons, and one another. And in this way, meals were both practical and sacred, a rhythm that tied them to the earth, the fire, and each other, creating a sense of security, comfort, and continuity that made even the coldest nights and longest winters bearable, teaching patience, resilience, and gratitude in every bite, every sip, and every quiet moment spent together in the soft glow of the hearth, the smoke rising gently into the thatched roof, carrying with it the promise of life, endurance, and the gentle warmth that could carry a family through even the harshest winter days. In the bitter winters of medieval villages, fire was more than comfort. It was life itself, and tending it required knowledge, skill, and constant vigilance. For without fire, peasants faced frozen hands, stiffened joints, and long, miserable nights that could make even the strongest shiver with cold. And every household treated the hearth with reverence, for it was not merely a place for cooking or warming. It was the center of their small universe, where survival, warmth, and family converged. And fire-making began long before the first snow fell, with careful preparation of fuel, the gathering of wood, peat, and even animal dung, all dried and stored to ensure it would ignite easily when the cold arrived. And peasants learned which types of wood burned hottest, which smoldered longest, and how to stack logs and kindling so that flames would rise steadily rather than sputter and die. And lighting a fire was a careful ritual, striking flint against steel to create sparks that caught on moss, straw, or shavings, coaxed gently. For a spark that failed could mean hours of frustration and an empty hearth. And once lit, the fire demanded constant attention. With logs shifted, embers stirred, and ashes cleared to maintain heat and prevent smoke from suffocating the small, crowded interior, while the smoke itself was both nuisance and necessity, keeping insects away, seasoning the walls, and signaling the heart of the home. And each member of the household contributed to the fire's care. Children learning early to add small twigs, carry kindling, and understand the fragility and importance of the flame. For one neglected ember could affect the warmth for everyone, and as the fire burned, it became a source of light for tasks that could not wait for daylight, illuminating the work of mending clothes, cooking meals, preparing tools, or caring for animals in corners of the cottage, while its heat pushed back the relentless chill of winter, radiating through bodies, blankets, and straw floors, creating a cocoon of relative comfort amidst the frozen world outside. And fuel itself was carefully rationed, for wood was precious, cut and stored months in advance, stacked to dry and prevent rot, while peat, often dug from distant bogs, was used sparingly, burned slowly, and sometimes mixed with wood to extend warmth. And in the smallest cottages, every ember was monitored through the night, a faint glow providing reassurance, while logs smoldered long enough to give heat for sleeping families. And outside, snow and wind might pile against walls, howl through gaps, or freeze steps, yet inside, the careful management of fire allowed life to continue, tasks to be completed, and families to endure the worst of winter's cruelty. And even the simplest fire became a center of social life, a place for telling stories, teaching children, sharing food, and creating a rhythm to the day and night. For the flickering light and crackling warmth offered not only survival, but a comforting cadence, a gentle reminder that the world outside was harsh, but inside there was order, purpose, and a steady presence. And as night deepened, the fire glowed softly, guiding weary eyes to sleep, warding off fear, frost, and darkness, while the smoke curled slowly upward, the aroma mingling with cooking food, straw, and wool. And in this careful maintenance of heat and light, the peasants found both practical security and psychological solace, understanding that a fire properly tended was more than warmth. It was hope, endurance, and a tangible sign that even the coldest winter could be survived, that the family could wake again tomorrow, continue their labors, and maintain life in the frozen, unyielding world. For in the medieval winter, fire was the rhythm of existence, the pulse of the home, and the quiet heartbeat that allowed every member of the household to rest, recover, and endure yet another day with resilience, patience, and the gentle reassurance that the flames, however small, would always guide them through the cold. In medieval peasant cottages, the hearth was more than warmth and light. It was also a sacred center where faith, tradition, and daily ritual intertwined with survival. For in a world ruled by frost, hunger, and uncertainty, belief offered both comfort and guidance, and every household approached the fire with a mixture of practicality and reverence, beginning with small gestures meant to protect the family, such as sprinkling a pinch of salt around the hearth to ward off misfortune, hanging herbs to cleanse the air, or placing a carved wooden cross or saint's image on a nearby beam, all acts that quietly reinforced a sense of safety and connection to something larger than themselves. And while the fire itself crackled and flared, its warmth carrying through the cottage, families performed nightly routines that blended care, reflection, and devotion, such as quietly offering thanks for the day's survival, murmuring prayers for the health of children and animals, or reciting brief blessings before partaking in the modest meals of porridge, bread, or broth, each spoonful a symbol of sustenance provided through both labor and divine favor. And these small rituals were observed with careful attention, for the peasants believed that neglecting such practices could bring misfortune, whether through illness, failed crops, or the loss of livestock. And in addition to these acts, the hearth was a place for storytelling that reinforced moral lessons, history, and faith, as parents and grandparents wove tales of saints, miraculous events, or the lives of local holy figures, each story gently shaping the children's understanding of right, wrong, and the natural order of the world, while also providing a sense of rhythm and comfort during the long, dark winter nights, and sometimes the family marked special occasions, even in the simplest way, lighting additional candles, preparing small feasts of what little food was available, or placing freshly baked bread near the fire as an offering to ensure blessings for the coming week. The soft glow of the flames illuminating these small acts with a reverence that made the ordinary feel sacred. And even the chores around the hearth became ritualized, from stoking the fire at precise intervals to arranging logs so embers would last through the night, to checking on animals whose presence contributed both warmth and every movement carried layers of meaning, a delicate balance of practicality and devotion, teaching children how survival, faith, and daily life were inseparable. And as the night deepened, families might quietly gather for final prayers, the flickering firelight casting long shadows on the mud and straw walls, the soft hum of voices mingling with the occasional crackle of wood, creating an atmosphere of calm, reflection, and gentle reassurance. And in these moments, the peasant cottage was transformed from a mere shelter into a sanctuary where cold, hunger, and hardship could be confronted not only with physical tools, but with spiritual resilience, for the fire, the food, and the rituals themselves became symbols of endurance, patience, and hope. And though the night stretched long and the wind howled against thatch and timber outside, inside, the rhythm of prayers, stories, and tending of the hearth established a sense of continuity and order, reminding every member of the household that despite the hardships of life, the world had structure, meaning, and care built into its smallest details. And as the family finally lay down to sleep, body heat pressed together, blankets drawn close, animals nestled nearby, the fire continuing its steady glow, and prayers whispered softly, there was a profound comfort in the knowledge that faith, ritual, and careful attention had preserved them through yet another day, that life continued under the glow of the hearth, and that even in the coldest, darkest nights, the combination of warmth, devotion, and human connection offered not just survival, but quiet, enduring reassurance that they were part of a world larger than themselves, guided and protected in the smallest, most ordinary ways by the rituals and beliefs that shaped every action, breath, and heartbeat in the gentle rhythm of medieval life. In the freezing winters of medieval Europe, clothing was not a matter of fashion or comfort. It was an essential tool of survival, and every peasant learned from childhood the importance of layers, materials, and careful maintenance for the bitter wind. Frost-covered fields and long hours outdoors could sap strength and endanger life if they were ill-prepared. And the basic wardrobe consisted of rough-spun woolen tunics, often patched repeatedly over years, with a coarse linen shirt beneath to provide a barrier against itchy fibers. And though the clothing was heavy, scratchy, and rarely clean by modern standards, it was layered strategically with cloaks, hoods, and stockings, woven or knitted from wool to trap heat, and leather shoes or simple boots hardened by smoke and oil-protected feet from snow and frozen ground. While children often wore miniature versions of adult garments, sometimes borrowed, sometimes handed down, growing up, learning to move and work in layers that could feel cumbersome but were life-saving. And when cold became extreme, peasants might add extra layers, stuffing tunics with straw or wrapping themselves in animal skins if available, to tucking belts, ropes, or sashes tightly to keep warmth close to the body. And head coverings were especially important, for heat lost from the head could quickly chill the entire body. So woolen hoods, caps, or even simple cloth wrappings became daily necessities, while gloves were rare and expensive, forcing hands to toughen through repeated exposure, developing resilience even as fingers cracked, bled, or grew numb during labor. And the maintenance of clothing was equally crucial, with patches sewn diligently, fabrics turned or layered to extend life, and garments carefully stored to prevent dampness or rot. For a wet tunic or sock could spell disaster during a bitter night. While layered clothing also shaped the rhythm of work, teaching peasants to dress and undress strategically, shedding outer layers when engaged in hard labor to avoid overheating, or bundling tightly when standing still in freezing wind, a knowledge passed down through observation, experience, and quiet instruction. And despite the humble materials, there was a pride in appearance that reflected care, resourcefulness, and respect for oneself and the household. For even worn and patched garments were part of the family's identity and survival strategy. And when peasants moved through snow-covered fields, carried firewood, or tended livestock, their layers became armor against the elements. Each fold, stitch, and layer a shield against frost. And inside the cottage, extra cloaks or tunics might be hung near the fire, drying, warming, and ready for the next day. While children learned to adjust layers on their own, imitating older siblings and adults, developing an instinct for warmth that could mean the difference between comfort and hypothermia. And every item of clothing held a story of use, repair, and care, the marks of wear and patches, a testament to endurance, thrift, and family memory. And even though fabrics were coarse and colors muted by smoke and washing, the garments created a private world of warmth, separating the body from the cold outside, while reinforcing the rhythm of life inside, where work, rest, meals, and fire all depended on preparation, foresight, and the practical wisdom of clothing choices. And when night fell, blankets, cloaks, and shawls were combined with bedding to create sleeping arrangements that kept families warm, while during the day, layering allowed peasants to manage exertion, wind, and weather with minimal discomfort, teaching patience, observation, and adaptation. And over generations, this knowledge became instinctive, part of the lived experience of survival, a quiet skill that shaped daily life as much as diet, fire, or shelter, reminding every peasant that even the smallest details of clothing, layering, and maintenance were essential to enduring winter, maintaining health, and creating a rhythm in which life could continue peacefully, steadily, and with the gentle reassurance that preparation and care, passed down over generations, could shield them from the harshest elements, giving warmth, comfort, and resilience in a world defined by cold. In the harsh winters of medieval Europe, a peasant's shelter was not merely a building, but a carefully balanced system of survival. And every aspect of a cottage, from walls to roof to floor, was designed to keep out the cold, wind, and snow, while preserving heat as efficiently as possible. And though the materials were simple wattle and daub walls made from sticks, mud, and clay, and roofs thatched with layers of straw or reeds, they provided a remarkable insulation when maintained properly. For the mud packed tightly between woven sticks created a barrier against drafts, while the thick straw roof absorbed cold and snow, slowly releasing warmth from the sun during the day and keeping the interior slightly more temperate at night. And floors, often bare earth layered with straw or rushes, acted as insulation from the frozen ground, the layers absorbing body heat and offering a small comfort to feet hardened from work and exposure. And windows were minimal, narrow slits or holes covered with oiled cloth, providing light but limiting heat loss, while doors were thick wooden planks, sometimes reinforced with animal hides or straw mats to keep out the wind. And every crack or gap was a potential source of chill, teaching peasants the importance of constant maintenance, filling holes with mud, straw, or moss, checking the integrity of the roof before winter, and repairing walls or thatch to ensure the smallest structure could withstand storms. And inside, space was arranged carefully, with beds of straw or rushes in corners, animals sometimes sharing sections of the floor to provide body heat, and household items strategically placed near the hearth so that warmth radiated throughout the room, creating microclimates that allowed work, rest, and meals to happen in relative comfort. And the interior itself was a lesson in efficiency, for every bench, chest, and tool had a purpose, often serving multiple functions, while every layer of wall, straw, and mud told a story of past repairs, winters endured, and the ingenuity of those who had lived there. And when snow piled against the walls or wind howled through the village, the peasants inside felt the contrast between the frozen exterior and the warmth within, a constant reminder that survival depended on diligence, preparation, and respect for the materials at hand. And even small improvements, such as hanging dried herbs, lining doors with straw mats, or placing stones near the hearth to radiate heat, became crucial strategies to maintain life during long, dark nights, and children learned early to navigate this space, understanding the relationship between the fire, walls, and roof, observing how every shift in wind or snow required attention, while parents taught them to repair, adjust, and improvise with what was available, creating skills that were as vital as the clothing they wore or the food they ate. And when night fell, blankets, cloaks, and extra layers of straw or rushes were arranged to provide warmth for sleeping bodies. Animals nestled nearby added heat, and the gentle glow of the hearth illuminated the interior, transforming the simple shelter into a sanctuary, a place of continuity, comfort, and quiet survival. While outside, snow pressed against the walls, frost formed along the edges of the roof, and the wind carried ice across the village. Yet inside, the combined effect of thoughtful construction, repair, and arrangement created a protective cocoon, teaching peasants the subtle balance of architecture, environment, and daily attention. And even though cottages were small, humble, and often fragile, they embodied centuries of accumulated knowledge, practical wisdom, and human ingenuity, showing that even the coldest, longest winters could be endured with careful design, attention, and the shared effort of families working together. And in this intimate space, warmth, safety, and a sense of control over the otherwise merciless elements allowed life to continue, providing a rhythm of labor, rest, and survival that shaped daily existence, reinforced community bonds, and quietly proved that even in the simplest structures, Human resilience and care could turn mud, straw, and sticks into a home capable of withstanding the harshest winters, a sanctuary where survival, comfort, and the gentle rhythm of life persisted through snow, frost, and wind. Within the modest walls of a medieval peasant's cottage, daily routines were dictated as much by the rhythm of survival as by the seasons, and each day, especially in winter, began and ended around the hearth, the central source of warmth, light, and life. For the cold outside dictated precise timing, careful movement, and a constant awareness of the environment. And as morning broke, the first task was always to ensure that the fire, which had burned through the night, was still alive, embers coaxed into flame, small sticks and kindling added with deliberate care to maintain steady heat. For without it, even the simplest activities, fetching water, feeding animals, or preparing a meal, became painful struggles against frostbitten hands and numb feet. And once the hearth was tending properly, family members moved quietly through their routines. Children helping with small chores like sweeping straw, collecting leftover scraps, or carrying water from the nearby well or stream, their movements careful so as not to disturb the fragile balance of warmth inside the cottage. While adults attended to larger tasks such as chopping firewood, mending tools and clothing, preparing meals, and feeding animals that shared the interior space for warmth, all actions carefully coordinated so that energy was not wasted and every available resource contributed to survival, and meals themselves followed a rhythm with porridge, bread, and simple broths prepared over the fire, eaten together near its heat. The act of eating not merely to satisfy hunger, but to fortify bodies for labor, and every utensil, pot, and bowl had its place, arranged to maximize efficiency, while leftover scraps were saved, dried, or reused to minimize waste. For scarcity made careful planning a daily necessity, and as the day progressed, tasks rotated naturally with light, weather, and need, from tending to animals to repairing the thatched roof, layering straw over gaps in walls, or drying damp clothing near the fire. Each action forming a continuous rhythm that kept the household functioning, and even small moments like grinding grain, washing clothes, or preparing herbs became meaningful, each requiring attention, skill, and patience, teaching children observation, perseverance, and respect for the work of survival. And throughout all of this, the fire remained central, its warmth radiating outward, allowing work to be completed without freezing, providing light for evening tasks, and offering comfort during brief pauses when family members could sit, rest, or exchange quiet words. And these pauses were essential, for they reinforced bonds, allowed planning for the next day, and offered a gentle sense of order in an otherwise harsh and unpredictable world, while animals, both livestock and pets, moved quietly among the family, contributing warmth and companionship. And the sounds of the cottage crackling fire, murmured voices, clinking utensils, rustling straw, and occasional animal noises formed a continuous, soothing backdrop that marked the passage of time, blending work, life, and care into a seamless rhythm. And as evening approached, tasks slowed. The hearth was replenished to burn steadily through the night. Bedding arranged, animals settled, and final meals prepared. Each movement deliberate, while small acts of faith such as murmured prayers, the placement of crosses, or blessings over food, reinforced both security and hope. And when night finally fell, the household gathered near the fire, sharing warmth, reflecting on the day, listening to whispered stories, and preparing mentally for tomorrow's repetition of work and survival. For in this small, straw-filled, mud-walled cottage, daily routines were not mere habit. They were essential strategies for enduring winter, keeping bodies and minds functional, and preserving family life and the repetition, care, and attention demanded by each day taught patience, foresight, and a quiet, enduring resilience. As the fire glowed steadily, shadows danced across walls, and the household slowly drifted into sleep, knowing that every task completed, every chore tended, and every small decision around warmth, food, and shelter had contributed to survival, continuity, and the subtle comfort of life persisting within the fragile but protective walls of the cottage. A gentle rhythm that repeated endlessly, guiding generations of peasants through the cold, dark winters with patience, endurance, and a quiet, unspoken triumph over the harshness of the natural world. Even in the dead of winter, when snow covered the fields and the wind cut through layers of wool and linen, medieval peasants continued their labor, for survival demanded constant attention to crops, animals, and household needs. And although the ground was frozen and the work arduous, every day required careful planning, patience, and endurance, beginning with the tending of livestock, which was often the most pressing task. For cows, goats, and chickens needed feeding, water, and shelter, and any lapse could result in sickness or loss that would jeopardize the family's food supply. And peasants moved through the snow in thick layers of clothing, trudging carefully to barns or pens, carrying feed, breaking ice in troughs, and ensuring that animals remained healthy, warm, and calm, while children often assisted by gathering hay, bringing small bundles of kindling, or carrying scraps to the animals, learning early the rhythm of labor, the importance of careful attention, and the physical strength required to survive winter. And once the animals were tended, work shifted to the land itself, which in winter meant clearing snow from paths, checking fences, and preparing tools for the spring planting season. Tasks that required both endurance and creativity, as frozen soil could not be plowed, but preparation of seeds, repair of wooden implements, and organization of stored crops ensured that life would continue when the thaw arrived. And throughout these labors, the peasants remained attentive to the weather, observing the wind, sky, and temperature. For a sudden storm could halt work, threaten animals, or block paths, and every movement was deliberate, conserving energy while maintaining productivity, teaching young apprentices patience, observation, and resilience. And while work was the focus, it was punctuated by small comforts, brief moments near the fire to warm hands, share a drink of thin ale or warm water, or exchange quiet conversation that reminded the laborers of human connection amidst the harshness of the landscape. And the sounds of winter labor, the crunch of snow, the low murmur of animals, the scraping of tools, and occasional laughter formed a rhythm that carried peasants through the long hours, a cadence that was at once exhausting and comforting, as it structured the day, ensured survival, and connected each person to the larger system of family and community. And as afternoon approached, work continued with careful attention to warmth, movement, and efficiency. Every action planned to preserve energy while accomplishing necessary tasks, for inefficiency or carelessness could lead to exhaustion, frostbite, or loss. And even when storms arrived or temperatures dropped, the peasants adapted, creating windbreaks from straw, covering stored food, or moving chores indoors to the warmth of the cottage hearth, demonstrating ingenuity, foresight, and the quiet heroism of enduring in a world indifferent to human hardship. And although their labors were often repetitive, exhausting, and physically punishing, there was a rhythm, a structure, and a subtle satisfaction in knowing that each task completed, every animal cared for, and every preparation made contributed to the survival of the family through the long, dark winter, and that even in the frozen fields, life persisted, guided by observation, skill, endurance, and the shared understanding that survival required diligence, cooperation, and attention to both the land and one another. And as the day ended, peasants returned to the warmth of their cottages, clothing damp and stiff, muscles aching, but hearts steady, knowing that their work had preserved life, maintained the household, and set the stage for the comfort, warmth, and modest joys of the evening, when stories could be told, meals shared, and the gentle glow of the hearth could finally reward the labors of the day with rest, warmth, and the quiet satisfaction of surviving yet another frozen day. Even in the midst of winter, after the long hours of labor in frozen fields and tending animals, medieval peasants found ways to bring small joys into their lives. For work was relentless, and without moments of amusement, warmth, and connection, the hardships of cold, hunger, and exhaustion could weigh unbearably on body and spirit. And within the cottage, family members created simple games and pastimes that required little more than imagination. Scraps of wood or a bit of straw, such as rolling balls made from tightly bound rags across the floor, tossing pebbles or small sticks for children to catch, or engaging in quiet competitions that taught dexterity, patience, and observation, while older children might mimic adult tasks in playful ways, sweeping, tending the fire, or arranging straw mats, turning chores into gentle learning and amusement. And music, often improvised, filled the cottage with warmth, laughter, and rhythm, as parents or older siblings tapped sticks on benches, plucked simple stringed instruments, or hummed melodies while performing routine tasks, creating a cadence that was both comforting and energizing. And songs carried stories, lessons, and the subtle humor of daily life, teaching history, morality, or local gossip through melody, while the flickering light of the hearth cast shadows that danced across the walls, creating a theater of imagination where children might act out tales of saints, heroes, or mischievous animals. And even the simplest objects, a carved spoon, a piece of cloth, or a bundle of straw became part of creative play as peasants, young and old, improvised toys and games with what little they had, cultivating ingenuity, cooperation, and joy in the process. And moments of music or storytelling offered more than entertainment. They were essential to maintaining morale, reinforcing family bonds, and giving everyone, especially children, the energy and optimism needed to endure the long, dark nights and bitter cold. while occasional visits from neighbors added social warmth as families exchanged small gifts, shared songs, or played simple games together, extending a sense of community beyond the walls of the cottage. And even outdoor play occurred when weather permitted, as children ran through snow, imitating work or hunting, sledding down hills on wooden boards, or building small snow structures, all supervised carefully to prevent frostbite or exhaustion. And these activities, though brief, reinforced the rhythms of life, taught resilience, and reminded both children and adults that pleasure and creativity could exist even amidst scarcity, cold, and hardship. And as evening approached, the cottage was filled with quiet laughter, soft songs, and whispered stories, the fire crackling and glowing warmly, the smoke curling gently toward the thatched roof, while the aroma of simple meals mingled with the scents of straw, wood, and wool, creating an atmosphere both cozy and comforting, where labor, rest, and recreation blended seamlessly into the daily rhythm. And even the most modest forms of amusement carried deeper significance, teaching patience, social skills, improvisation, and emotional endurance, as well as reinforcing the bonds that allowed the family to function effectively and survive the winter together. And as night deepened, these small joys helped transition the household from work to rest, allowing hearts to relax, minds to calm, and the gentle sense of security, warmth, and belonging to settle in, reminding everyone that even in a world of scarcity, hardship, and bitter cold, laughter, music, play, and creativity were as essential to survival as food, fire, or clothing, providing sustenance for the spirit, continuity for the household, and the subtle, enduring reassurance that life, no matter how challenging, contained moments of comfort, pleasure, and quiet wonder that could be savored in the soft glow of the hearth and the shared presence of family. As the long winter day drew to a close in a medieval peasant cottage, the household gradually shifted from labor and play to the calm, deliberate routines of evening. When the day's work was reviewed, the hearth tended, and preparations for the night, and the process began with careful attention to the fire, rekindling embers, arranging logs for maximum heat, and ensuring that smoke escaped efficiently through the thatch or small chimney. For a well-maintained fire was both a practical necessity and a source of psychological comfort, radiating warmth that reached the corners of the room, drying damp clothing and bedding, and offering reassurance against the frozen world outside. While family members performed chores, quietly feeding animals, checking that doors and windows were secured against wind and frost, and moving any remaining water or supplies to accessible locations for the night. Each action deliberate, efficient, and mindful, teaching children the rhythms and responsibilities of survival. And as practical tasks were completed, the household transitioned into moments of reflection, storytelling, prayer, and quiet conversation, where adults recounted the events of the day, offered gentle guidance, or whispered moral lessons, while children listened attentively, learning the values of patience, resilience, and cooperation, and even small rituals, such as offering thanks for the day's survival, crossing oneself, or blessing the hearth, reinforced both faith and a sense of order, grounding the family in a reassuring pattern that blended work, care, and devotion. And as twilight deepened, Meals were concluded, utensils cleaned or stored, and leftover food carefully set aside for future use, while the aroma of cooked grains, roasted vegetables, or salted meat lingered faintly in the air, blending with the smoke and warmth to create a comforting atmosphere. And bedding was prepared, straw mats arranged in corners, blankets folded or laid out, and children positioned near adults or siblings, while animals found their spots in the corners, sharing their body heat. And cloaks or extra layers of clothing were tucked around those who slept first, ensuring that every individual benefited from the careful distribution of warmth. The combined effect of body heat, fire, and insulation creating a sanctuary from the cold, wind, and snow outside. And as the household settled, voices grew softer, movements slower, and the mind could reflect on the day, acknowledging tasks accomplished, challenges endured, and small victories. Whether in the health of livestock, the progress of repairs, the success of a meal, or the laughter shared during simple game. And these reflections, though quiet, provided emotional sustenance, a subtle reinforcement of resilience, and a sense of continuity, connecting the present moment to previous nights and lessons learned over generations. While the hearth continued its vigil, glowing steadily, crackling softly, its light casting shadows that danced across mud and straw walls, creating a gentle, hypnotic rhythm that guided eyes and minds toward rest. And even the smallest sounds, animal breaths, the rustle of straw, the occasional pop of burning wood became part of a soothing soundscape, marking time and creating a sense of calm and security. And as sleep approached, thoughts drifted naturally from the events of the day to hopes, prayers, and planning for tomorrow, a rhythm of anticipation and preparation that carried the family through darkness with quiet confidence, while faith, habit, and careful attention ensured that survival, warmth, and comfort were maintained in every action, every breath, and every movement. And finally, as eyes grew heavy and the body relaxed, the family lay still, cocooned in layers of straw, blankets, and clothing, hearts warmed not only by the fire, but by the steady, enduring pattern of life within the cottage. The knowledge that despite cold, hardship, and the endless repetition of work, they were safe, together, and prepared, and that the hearth, the shelter, the routines, and the care of one another had created a small sanctuary where survival, continuity, and quiet reassurance persisted through the long night, offering the gentle comfort of rest, reflection, and the subtle triumph of enduring another day in a world defined by winter's unyielding embrace, a rhythm repeated countless times over generations, shaping lives, teaching patience, resilience, and the quiet, enduring magic of human perseverance.